Members only, he said, slamming the door. 2 days later, the club shut down for good. What happens when a black baker offers water to a homeless man outside an elite club? He never imagined that one quiet act would spark a chain reaction that shut the doors of the powerful and open new ones for everyone else. It didn't start with shouting, no grand gesture, no picket sign waving under a camera light, no fist raised in fury. Nah, it started with a box. Cardboard, soggy on the edges, from a drizzle that had rolled across Boston like an old man's sigh. Inside that box was a homemade strawberry cake, sloppy lettering piped in red. Happy birthday, Nia. A real cake, not store-bought, not plastic covered from a gas station fridge. This one was personal, each letter written with a shaky hand at 5 a.m. after a full night shift at the bakery. That's how Amal King rolled. The man wasn't wealthy in dollars, but his promises? Those were his currency. And today's promise was frosting, strawberries, and a little girl's joy. He moved fast, not rushed like a man on the run, but like somebody trying to outrun disappointment. Nia, his baby sister, was waiting. 8 today. Just old enough to know life didn't always deliver on the things it said it would, but this time her big brother would, no matter what. Boston on a Saturday morning had a certain smell, burnt espresso and indifference. People strolled through brownstone streets like life was a brunch menu, soft, overpriced, and best enjoyed indoors. But Amal, he was navigating traffic on Huntington Avenue, dodging taxis and side-eyes. His flour-dusted hoodie and steel-toe shoes didn't fit the cozy latte aesthetic. He didn't care. Not today. Then came the building. The Coterie Club. Even the name sounded like something you needed a password and a trust fund to pronounce. The place was gold-trimmed and smug, like the people inside had never eaten a sandwich with their hands. Amal didn't look up long, wasn't here for that. He was just trying to get across the block. That's when he saw him. Old black man. Sitting on the stone steps like the city had wrung him out and left him to dry. Jacket torn in the elbow, socks mismatched, and eyes. Man, those eyes had seen. They weren't begging. They weren't soft. They were tired, like somebody who'd walked through America barefoot. "Excuse me, sir," the man murmured, his voice almost swallowed by traffic. "Got any water?" Amal didn't hesitate. Not because he wanted applause, not because he needed to prove anything, but because in that moment, it wasn't a decision. It was reflex. You either got heart or you don't. He dug into his bag, pulled out a plastic bottle, and handed it over like it was sacred. And that's exactly when the scene changed. Suddenly, security materialized, like cologne from a bad suit. A man in a navy blue jacket burst through the club doors, arms waving like he was casting out spirits. "Hey, hey, this is private property," he barked. "You need to move, both of you. This is for members only." Amal turned slowly, bottle still in hand. He opened his mouth to say something calm, measured even, but didn't get the chance. Because right then, the big boss stepped out. This man wasn't security. No, this was management. A white guy in a white suit and designer sunglasses. He looked like he hadn't touched public transportation since Clinton was in office. He didn't speak right away, just stared at Amal, at the bottle, at the box in his hand. Then finally, with all the grace of a courtroom sentence, he said, "Members only," and slammed the door. No shoving, no yelling, just a door. But the sound of that lock clicking might as well have been a slap across the face. Amal stood still, cake trembling in his grip. The frosting inside had shifted, smearing the name he'd written by hand. Somewhere nearby, someone chuckled. A woman in a cashmere coat whispered to her companion, "Why'd he even talk to that guy?" Another man muttered, always trying to make a scene. He walked away. Not because he was weak, because he knew better than to argue with a system that practiced its rejection like a sport. The sun bore down on his back, sweat sliding down the line of his spine. His hands didn't relax. He held that box like armor, like the last shred of dignity he wasn't willing to let go of. When he got home, Nia saw the cake and squealed. Eyes wide, joy pouring from her like light. And for a moment, just one, Amal thought, maybe that's enough. Maybe her smile is justice. But later that night, sleep didn't come. Not because he was angry, but because something deep down itched in his bones. Something structural, something wrong. He picked up his phone, scrolled out of habit. That's when he saw it. Video, security footage, grainy but clear. It showed him handing over the water, the security guard flailing, the door slamming in his face. Somebody had posted it, not him, but it was out there. And now it was spreading. He read the captions. "A man offers water, gets kicked off the steps. The Coterie, where black kindness gets denied entry." Amal King tried to help. They tried to silence him. The shares piled up. The comments poured in. People saw themselves in that footage. People who'd been rejected from restaurants, who'd been mistaken for staff, who'd been followed around in stores for no reason other than their skin. By morning, his inbox was flooded. One call stood out. A woman, voice clipped like a courtroom stenographer. "Mr. King," she said, "did you file a complaint against the club?" "No," Amal replied, "but maybe I should have." Click. She hung up. Later that day, on his way to the bakery, someone called his name. It was Trevor, an old friend, dishwasher at the very same club. He held up his phone like it was evidence. "Dude," he said, "they're freaking out. Owner got called in by the city council. They're pulling old records. Councilman Grayson, the same one who curated the guest list, he's sweating. And your picture, it's everywhere." Amal looked. The image on the screen showed him, standing with the box next to the guard. Two figures, one serving, one pushing away. That night, 3 men in dark suits knocked on his door. One held an envelope. "We'd like to offer a gesture," he said. "A goodwill compensation for the misunderstanding." Amal looked them dead in the eye. "This isn't about money," he said. The second man spoke, smirking. "Well, Mr. King, I'm sure you wouldn't want any unfortunate health code inspections at your bakery. That'd be a shame." Amal didn't flinch. He closed the door, quietly, but with finality. This time, he was the one slamming the door in someone's face. Later, alone at the kitchen table, he opened a notebook, wrote 6 words, "Injustice doesn't fade, it calcifies in silence." And below that, "It lives in gold plaques and closed doors." Then he paused and underlined it once. By the time Amal stepped into the bakery the next morning, the familiar scent of dough, butter, and vanilla no longer brought comfort. It used to calm him, a kind of soft, invisible hug at the start of each long day. But today that scent hit his nerves like too much perfume in a tight elevator. His hands moved mechanically, scooping flour into the mixer, but his mind wouldn't let go of one thought. They threw me out like I was lint on their collar. For what? For offering water? He never intended to become anyone's symbol. No fists raised, no dramatic speeches. He was just a man trying to be decent in a world that punishes decency. But the city, the city had other plans for him. Without asking, without warning, it had decided to make him a headline. And the absurdity of it all? It only got worse that day. It started with a call from the building office. His landlord, old Mr. Jenkins, sat behind a desk like it was his throne. White hair combed stiff, cheeks puffed like a man swallowing too much pride, and papers on the table that looked like they'd been printed out of spite. "There have been complaints," Jenkins said, dragging the word like it hurt his gums, "from tenants. They say your publicity is causing disruption." Amal didn't sit down, didn't blink, just stared at him like a man who's run out of patience and found resolve instead. "You mean to say I became a problem because I gave water to a homeless man?" he said. "Or is this about the fact your black tenant ended up on the evening news and suddenly your tenants realized they don't live in a bubble?" Jenkins squirmed. "Now let's not exaggerate. I'm not exaggerating. I'm telling you the truth. And for the record, I pay my rent on time, every single month. You want to talk about disruption? Go check your son's portfolio. The one who invests in tech and still owes back taxes." Silence. Jenkins didn't say another word, just deflated into his chair like an empty grocery bag. By late afternoon, the inbox for Amal's bakery was overflowing. One message stood out, a name he recognized, Rachel Mason, a journalist with the Boston Herald, polished, sharp, relentless in the way people used to be when truth still mattered. "We've received over 300 letters in the past 48 hours, she said over the phone. "All complaints, most about the Coterie Club. People who were denied entry, people who tried to host events and got the private function excuse. Almost all of them Black or Latino, or from neighborhoods this city pretends don't exist." Amal didn't even flinch. He knew. They all knew. But hearing it lined up like bullets in a magazine, it still hit different. "And now," Rachel continued, "they want to hear from you. You're the name, the face. What do you want to say?" He took a breath. "Look, I didn't ask to be the flag on this hill," he said. "I handed someone water. That's it. But I guess now you got to explain even that." The next day, the suits showed up. Not police, not reporters, not protesters. No, these were the slick ones. Clean ties, clean fingernails, and even cleaner intentions. One of them held a phone like it was a badge. Another spun a business card between his fingers like a magician waiting for applause. "We have a proposal," the man in front said. "Mr. King, have you considered outside investment? We're willing to purchase your establishment for a generous sum." Amal stared at them like someone being asked if they'd like a new face. "And I'm guessing you're representing a group of independent investors?" he asked, dusting flour off his apron. We represent interests concerned with preserving social harmony, he smirked. Translation, I scared your wealthy friends. Now they're worried that the next set of doors might open too wide. Mr. King, surely you're a reasonable man. Number, I'm a tired man, and with age, tired becomes patient. Patient becomes angry. So here's my reasonable answer. Get out. He didn't shout, didn't raise a hand, just turned and shut the door behind him, firm like closing a closet filled with things you no longer hide. And then, the madness truly began. That same evening, a voice called from his bakery's landline, official, clipped, no wasted syllables, like someone used to delivering bad news politely. Mr. King, this is the State Commission on Civil Rights. Would you be willing to provide testimony? We've launched an internal inquiry into the Coterie Club. For the first time, we believe we have enough. Amal showed up the next morning. The building smelled like forgotten decades. Old carpet, pine cleaner, and paperwork. He was greeted by a woman named Mrs. O'Brien. Her hair was the color of used chalk. Her tone, stricter than a Sunday sermon. You're not obligated to speak, she said, offering a file. But your account would be valuable. He looked at her sideways. Valuable for who? You or me? Because suddenly now, everyone's interested in the truth. But where was this office when black folks were being turned away from that club since 1996? She didn't answer. Just slid the file across the table. 138 pages, she said. 12 years of complaints. 96% from African Americans. All marked as unsubstantiated or dismissed under private property rights. Amal flipped through. Yeah, he muttered. Private property. That's the magic phrase, huh? The American euphemism for whites only. We acknowledge there were systemic oversights. Oversight? He laughed. This isn't someone forgetting to send an email. This is a system. It's like a draft in an old house, blowing through every crack, and y'all just learned to ignore the cold. O'Brien leaned back. Then she reached into a second file and laid out the ace. A board member leaked internal documents, anonymously. They contained guest lists, entrance criteria, and rejection codes. See here? She pointed. Inappropriate attire, lacks verified social circle, and this one may not reflect cultural tone of establishment. Amal raised an eyebrow. Cultural tone, he said. You mean too poor? Too dark? Too unpolished? Got it. Would you be willing to testify? He looked her dead in the eye. Lady, I was born ready. 2 days later, Trevor burst into the bakery like he'd seen a ghost. They're shutting it down, he said, breathless. Not temporarily, not under review. It's over. The Coterie Club is done. Amal kept kneading dough, the motion steady, rhythm unchanged. His hands moved like memory. After your testimony, Trevor said, and when those rejection lists leaked, everything exploded. One councilman resigned. Another is being investigated. It's wild. You're on CNN now. They're calling you the voice of sidewalk justice. But Amal didn't feel victorious. No fireworks in his chest. No parade in his stomach. Just a slow, solid ache. Not regret, just wait. Because this wasn't a battle he started. It was a wound he stumbled into. And now the infection had reached the palace. That evening, Amal walked the long way home. Past the same streets, same steps, same pain. And then, he saw it. The Coterie Club. Sign torn down. Windows empty. Spray painted across the glass in thick black letters. Your members-only club just expired. On the steps sat the same man from before. The man who had only asked for water. He looked up, smiled. Beside him stood a woman, volunteer uniform, handing out sandwiches. You again, the old man said. You gave me water that day. And now look, looks like Boston's finally open again. Amal sat beside him, still didn't say much, just nodded. Because sometimes all it takes is one human gesture, one refusal to look away, to shake the dust off the truth. And when that happens, even stone doors can fall. The next morning, Amal stood at the bakery sink, rinsing a baking tray with boiling water. The metal sizzled as leftover oil curled up in little angry pops. The kitchen was warm, steady, familiar. But today something was off, not in the air, in him. That quiet sense of routine, it had been replaced with static. And the phone wouldn't stop ringing, every 5 minutes like clockwork. First came the familiar voices. Saw your speech, man. That thing you said about aesthetic filtration? Whew, you went off, brother. Then came reporters, then came activists. Then lawyers, PR people, organizers, all sounding like they had just discovered Amal King after pretending men like him didn't exist. But then came the strangest call of all, City Council, a voice soft and cautious like someone tiptoeing across broken glass. Mr. King, it said, We'd like to invite you to a private meeting, informal, off the record, to discuss what you might expect moving forward. Amal turned down the flame on his stove. Expect? He repeated. Like what? Tea and cookies? Maybe a polite, let's forget the whole thing? No, no, nothing like that, the voice stammered. We just want to open a dialogue. He hung up the phone. A dialogue? Now, the same system that had spent decades treating him like wallpaper now wanted to talk? It felt like a neighbor who'd been stealing your electricity for years suddenly inviting you to dinner. As if breaking bread could erase the fact that your lights had been flickering since 2003. By noon, a line had started to form outside his bakery. No signs, no chance, just people. Black folks, Latino families, Asian elders, white workers in dusty boots. Some wanted coffee. Others wanted to see that guy from the internet. But many, most, came with something deeper in their eyes. Someone left a note taped to the door. Thank you for not swallowing this. Amal kept his hands busy. He kneaded dough, glazed loaves, rotated trays. He didn't put up a poster. He didn't rehearse a speech. But inside, something was churning that had nothing to do with yeast. He hadn't performed a miracle. He hadn't exposed state secrets. He just offered water to a man who needed it. Why did that shake the city? That evening, Trevor came by. He walked in waving a copy of the Boston Herald. Front page, headline in bold, Coterie Collapse, Power, Race, and the Man Who Dared to Disobey. Trevor grinned. Man, you're a legend now. My grandmother said, ain't he that polite boy from the bakery? Amal laughed dryly, wiping flour from his apron. I'm not a hero, T, he said. I'm just a tired man who got sick of being polite to a system that treats politeness like a doormat. Trevor nodded. Then, like he'd been saving the best news for last, he said, by the way, that group, Equity Rising, they're asking for you. They want to name scholarships after you. Amal sat down, didn't say a word for a full minute, because that's when it hit him. This thing wasn't slowing down. It had taken on a life of its own. It had legs, and now it was running. The culmination didn't arrive with confetti or camera flashes. It came like spilled milk, sudden, quiet, and irreversible. 2 days later, he got a letter, not an email, a real envelope, embossed seal, stamped. We regret to inform you that the business license for the Coterie Club has been permanently revoked. Grounds: systemic discrimination, falsification of complaint records, manipulation of membership vetting, and intentional cultural bias. Below it were signatures, names he'd heard just weeks before saying things like, we're reviewing the situation, and let's not rush to judgment. Now their ink was dry. Amal read it twice, then he laughed. Alone, loud, not out of joy, but because there was something almost cartoonish about how fast principles evaporated when a scandal came knocking. But the most powerful moment didn't happen in court. It didn't happen on national TV. It happened on a sidewalk. He walked past the old building, the one with the gold trim and the velvet ropes. It looked different now. The windows were cloudy, dust layered the glass like regret, and taped to the door, crooked and weather-stained, hung a sign, closed permanently. On the same steps, the same man sat, the one who had asked for water. Hey, son, he called out. You came back? Amal walked over and sat beside him. The same volunteer woman from before was handing out food again. This time, hot meals, warm bread. No judgment. You remember, the old man said. You didn't say much that day. Just handed me water. No lecture, no sermon. Just helped. He pointed toward the door. Now look, they used to come here for status. Now, people come here because they're hungry. That's more human. Amal nodded. No need for speeches. Truth didn't always need volume. 1 week later, the Commons, the name Amal had painted across the bakery's window, stopped being just a bakery. It became a meeting place, a little corner of real democracy. They hosted free lunches, held community meetings, poets recited verses, elders told stories about being turned away, from clubs, from colleges, from lives they were fully qualified to live. No funding drives, no corporate sponsors, just people showing up and deciding they weren't going to stay silent anymore. And Amal, he still did the dishes, still baked the bread, still worked the register with the same quiet pride. But inside, something had shifted. This, he thought, scrubbing a tray clean, this is justice. Not the headlines, not the speeches, just dough and truth mixed together. One day, a young couple approached, a black woman and a Latino man. We're opening a bookstore, the woman said, and we'd love for you to speak at the opening. You're kind of an example. For our daughter. Her name's Nia, by the way. That name, Amal smiled. Look, he said, I'm not a politician. I'm not a preacher. I'm just a tired guy who said enough one day. She didn't blink. Sometimes that's all it takes. That night, Amal turned off the lights and sat alone in the quiet. He looked out across the empty space. No applause, no audience, just the memory of a man who was thirsty, in a moment where saying yes to compassion changed everything. He thought, this didn't start with anger. It started with water, with the simple belief that no one should stay thirsty just because of the body they were born into. That's the revolution. Small, persistent, uninvited, but real, and still rising.